Hey, it's Steve Zotke, and welcome to another edition of the Traction Reaction Podcast, talking ASA Racing and the Milwaukee Mile. ASA Racing, the American Speed Association, came to the Milwaukee Mile for the first time in May of 1978, and it was quite an eye-opener for many of us in the Milwaukee area. ASA, of course, had been gaining traction, and the late models in general had been increasing in popularity, especially with participation. Meanwhile, Milwaukee, who had been a mainstay of USAC stock car racing, to be honest, USAC stock car racing had become stagnant over the last couple of years. Even with the addition of drivers like Joe Ruttman, Rusty Wallace, Alan Kawicki, and others, many thought that ASA was probably a better alternative. And with drivers like Bob Seneker, Dick Trickle, Tom Refner, and even Dave Watson coming over to race ASA, and that it was certainly a racing series that was on the come, as they would say. And in 1978, in January 1978, Wisconsin Auto Racing with John Cation, Rex Robbins actually approached Cation and Wisconsin Auto Racing about the feasibility of racing at the Milwaukee Mile. And to Rex Robbins' surprise, John Cation, who in the book by Dave Argerbright, Let's Go Racing on Rex Robbins, was kind of surprised that Cation seemed disinterested, and Robbins was kind of afraid that, oh boy, this meeting's going nowhere. But when he popped the question, Cation said, sure, let's do it. So in May of 1978, ASA Racing came to the Milwaukee Mile for the first time, and there was a lot of anticipation to the event. And when it was announced in January, I think it definitely put USAC Racing on its heels. At the time, there were 11 events on the USAC calendar, which 4 of them were at Milwaukee. So Milwaukee was definitely the hub of USAC stock car racing, and with ASA Racing, it certainly was a added treat to the fans in Milwaukee, and that's what they were looking for. Cation did remark to ASA, Billy Saxon, and those saying, "Hey, we just want more entertainment for the fans. We need." And if you look back on it, it certainly makes sense. They were looking for a way to bring fans into the stands, and ASA were certainly the way to do it. So on May 7th, 1978, Mark Martin broke the track record in getting the pole position for the Super America 150, and he was one of many to break the track record for stock cars that day. And in Wisconsin, early May, you can have 75 and beautiful conditions, or it can be really cold and damp, and you could have weather anywhere from the 40s, 50s, or low 60s. Well, unfortunately, on May 7th, 1978, it was a cold, damp day. Thankfully, they were able to get the race in, but for many of us in the bleachers, like I was that day, it was a damn cold day. My guess would be it maybe hit 50 degrees, but it was overcast, and I remember the wind coming across from the lake, and it was just a brutal day. But for many of I think we had about 16,000 people out there that day for the first ASA race at Milwaukee. It was one that we won't soon forget, as Mark Martin, who, like I said, was the pole winner, dominated pretty much the first half of the event, and then I believe it was Randy Sweet spun. There was a yellow flag. Everybody slowed down, but inexplicably, Mark Martin just ran into the back of him. He was able to continue. They had to do some long pit stops for repairs. He was able to continue, but he was pretty much out of contention, finishing 15th. That opened the door for Bob Seneker, the Bluebird from Dorr, Michigan. And at that time, as a young lad, I didn't know that much about Bob Seneker, but I certainly became a fan that day. And he pretty much dominated the rest of the event, winning over Larry Phillips, who would go into the NASCAR Hall of Fame as a short track driver. Larry Phillips was an exceptional driver. He had driven USAC stock cars a couple years earlier and was quick right out of the box. Larry Phillips was a hell of a driver. Dick Trickle, Larry Deachins, and Dave Watson rounded out the top 5. But it was a who's who of racing. Just looking at the box score here, John Anderson, who was a heck of a driver, Mike Miller, who many people will remember him with his that Cutlass body he had on his car. Of course, Don Gregory in the Jegs car. Ed Hoffman drove USAC stock cars too. Arnie Christensen was in a Plymouth Volare that day as well was Jim Cushman, an absolute legend in Ohio short track racing. John Canals was in the race. Of course, he was the father of Chad Canals, legendary chief mechanic and builder in NASCAR. Of course, the aforementioned Randy Sweden, Mike Eddy, who was pretty much just starting off his career in ASA and would become a ASA legend. Other drivers, Ricky Knotts, who unfortunately lost his life in a race car, as did Pat Schauer. Freddie Fryer was there. Slinger short track legend Conrad Morgan was a young lad just starting off racing. Joe Shear, Ralph Latham, who had driven USAC stocks for many years, was in the race, as was Johnny Reimer, who was a local modified star and drove Camaros and USAC stock cars. And there was 14 drivers missed the race that day, including Johnny Bogeman, the Black Knight of the Super America Knights. You had, of course, Dick Trickle was the White Knight, Tom Reffner was the Blue Knight, and Johnny Bogeman was the Black Knight. And just Butch Marendorf, friend of the family. I remember Butch and Billy Marvel Jr., who I got to know Bill Marvel very well. Unfortunately, Billy Marvel Jr. lost his life in a sprint car, I believe, in 1983. But just, I mean, you looking back on it, it was an absolute stacked field, and ASA racing, it really grabbed my attention. Rex Robbins had a good thing going there. And then to expand it where they were able to race at Michigan later in the early 80s. I mean, there was some good racing, and for many years raced at the Milwaukee Mile. And once again, the ASA brand returns to the historic mile for a Father's Day event coming up. It's the ASA Stars National Tour for the Father's Day 100, Sunday, June 18th at the Milwaukee Mile. We'll have ticket information, and we hope to see you guys out for a really cool event to see, once again, late model racing at the Milwaukee Mile. They put on a great show, and we hope to see you out there.